इरफान भट्टी आपकी खिदमत में हाज़िर है। और जैसा कि सुबह की ट्रांसमिशन में मैंने अपने सामीन से ये शेयर किया था कि शाम तकरीबन 3:30 बजे शेख हाशिम साहब, जिनका इंट्रोडक्शन भी मैंने कराया था, कि वो एक लेक्चर यहाँ डिलीवर करेंगे जो आपकी खिदमत में हम बराह रास्त नशर करेंगे। और उनके एक और प्रोग्राम की वजह से इसमें कुछ थोड़ी सी ताख़ीर हो गई। और अभी मैं आपको लिए चलता हूँ राज़ी हाल रिफ़ा इंटरनेशनल यूनिवर्सिटी अल मीज़ान कैंपस में, जहाँ से आप शेख हाशिम अहमद साहब का जो लेक्चर है वो बराह रास्त सुन सकेंगे। तो चलते हैं, सुनते हैं शेख हाशिम अहमद साहब को।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन, वस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला सय्यिदिल मुरसलीन व अला आलिहि व सहाबतिहि अजमईन, अम्मा बाद। I'm going to talk about today our model of Ubudiyya business model. And previously here at Riphah we have talked about the al-khair business model. Last time that I have been meeting you all. So we had a small business which we were trying to develop a sort of a role model business, right? And we call that the al-khair model. Since then, alhamdulillah, a lot of fikr has gone into this project and a lot of people have come on board. So now it's developed into a whole, sort of umbrella organization. And the basis of this whole model is the ayat al-karima, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, wa ma khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and next slide. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned clearly in the Holy Quran, and I believe that that's basically the topic that I was supposed to talk on, and that is the object of life. So this is a topic that, philosophers throughout the millenniums have been searching for, and unless they have the assistance of wahi, they'll never actually really come to the point. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very kindly and very clearly has given us, our purpose of life. Why are we here? And that's clearly identified and graphically identified in the ayat. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ وَمَا خَلَقْتُ مَا وَإِلَّا. This is a, nafi istithna, what we call in the Arabic language, and it means that basically there's no objective and there's no maqsad of creating the man except one, and that is that he is to be continuously involved in the worship and service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So if that's the case, and that is obviously the case, and it's very important to realize, particularly those who are listening today, because alhamdulillah, whether we're here in the auditorium or those who are listening on air, so probably 99% of the people listening are Muslims. So we know this. But you'll be surprised that what a dilemma it is if you don't have the answer to this question. And I've probably mentioned to our students here before sitting in the lecture hall that perhaps if not I'll mention it again, that this is something that you require wahi. The human aql, it has its limitations. It can deal with alam and mushahada, it can deal with things that it can see, it can deal with things that it can smell, taste, hear, think about. But beyond that, it cannot. So this question of what's our purpose, this is not answerable through the senses. It's not answerable through your intelligence. And I've mentioned many times that, my cousin, who was in the 1970s, while he was a student in Harvard University, and after my accepting Islam, so I was visiting my relatives, and I just asked my cousin that, tell me, he's not a Muslim. He's gone through the best that the West has in terms of education. So I just asked him that, what's your object of life? So he just scratched his head and put his head down and thought for a while and gave this answer, I don't know. I don't know. So it means that the best that, as they say, conventional wisdom, popular intelligence, conventional education, the whole system that they have, it cannot produce the answer to this question. Otherwise, a Harvard student should be able to answer this, Now, it's also interesting that if you ask a little kid out in the gaon, in the village, here in Pakistan, or in Mauritania, or in the Congo, or in Malaysia, any small Muslim child, ask him, okay, why have you been created? And he'll say, to worship my Allah. In Urdu, what do you say, huh? वो अल्लाह के इबादत के लिए हैं ये छोटी बच्ची if you ask them तो अल्लाह की इबादत के लिए और क्या and if you go in a gaon you'll get this answer if you go in the university you might have less clarity but you probably get this answer that's interesting sometimes the less the education the more the clarity but in any case the point is that without wahi you cannot answer this question. Okay, so we've identified that and we all know that we've been created for ubudiyya alone, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ibadah or ubudiyya. And if that's all we've been created for, then that means that anything which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has permitted us to do, it has to fall under the heading of ubudiyya. It should be within the realm of ubudiyya. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not let us do something that is outside of the objective for which He has created us, isn't it? So it's quite a logical, equation here. So that being the case, and that is the case, then let's look at business. Business is jaiz. So if business is jaiz, then it should be part of our life of ubudiyya. Okay? However, it doesn't mean that all people doing business are going to be in the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're going to be in the kayfiyat of ubudiyya. That's actually conditionally. So conditionally meaning that if we have three conditions, then it will be considered ubudiyya, otherwise it's outside of the ubudiyya, and then it's just like we used to ask the question previously, is business deen or dunya? Last time I came, then we used to ask this question. We used to start the presentation and the discussion with this question. And people used to generally, give pretty much the right answer. But the point is that business could be dunya, it could be deen. It depends on three conditions. And those three conditions are intention, niyat, shariat, and sunnat. If niyat is correct, mutabiq of shariat, mutabiq of sunnat, then actually our business activities can become part of our life of ubudiyya. And to define ubudiyya, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's servitude, because actually, theoretically, everything is in a state of ubudiyya. Kullun fi falakin yasbahun. Everything is moving in its orbit, it's moving in its realm, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hukum. So actually, you are in the servitude of Allah whether you like it or not, And everything except the humankind, men and jinn, they are subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without thinking, without choice, by default, Sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, the animal kingdom, vegetable kingdom, everywhere. Everything is actually in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but by default, not by choice, but by nature. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given man and jinn the choice. He can submit, he cannot submit. And for that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given aql, He has given intelligence, to ponder over the signs of the greatness and the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through the vehicle of intelligence and aql, he should come to the conclusion that behind all of this, Rabbana ma khalaqta hadha batila. Oh Allah, you haven't created this without any purpose. And all of this creation cannot be without a creator. So then after pondering over this, then the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ni'mat and adma, it creates a situation, it creates a kayfiyat in the human being that is something between love and fear. Haiba and khawf. Mahabbat and, Mahabbat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, khawf min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, hope and fear. So this kayfiyat actually, with this kayfiyat, then we surrender to Allah. So this kayfiyat is known as ubudiyah. And actually that is the essence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. To use our mind, to use our faculties to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to acquire ma'rifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With that ma'rifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to submit. So that's why we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's obedience and His servitude, but out of His love and reverence. It's not just about a Shari compliant, financial products which could be offered by, Fulan Islami Bank in Pakistan or Citibank or, Chase Manhattan. So Shari compliant products, of Chase Manhattan, which have been provided by a non-Muslim bank, yes, they're Shari compliant, but they're not going to be Ubudiyah compliant because this is missing, you see. So what we're talking about is not simply Shari compliance, we're talking about, a whole kayfiyat, acquiring a kayfiyat, and from that kayfiyat, acting upon that kayfiyat. Okay? So this system of ubudiyah in all the aspects of life is called deen. So what is deen? Deen is actually this whole system of ubudiyat in all of our activities. That's what deen is, you see. Deen, it's not a falsafa, it's not it's not simply a nizam, it's not simply, it is actually an entire system of inward and outward, everything that the human being is engaged in, inwardly and outwardly. That whole system is called deen. Next slide, please. Okay, application. So how do we apply this? All of our activities, including business, can and should be part of our life of ubudiyah. Thereby we don't just earn, money. We don't just earn dollars and rupees. We actually, the main focus is earning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure and rewards in akhirat. وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. So, rizq, everyone's going to get their rizq, Even cockroaches and ants and rats, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is muqaddar their rizq. So obviously a person who is in His service and in His, ubudiyat and trying to obey His commandments and follow His Nabi, obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give his rizq. So you're going to get the rizq in any case. The main thing is how do we acquire Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure and rewards in akhirat while pursuing our rizq. Okay? This is a basic paradigm shift that needs to happen. It's not about top line and bottom line, it's about pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and getting into Jannah. So this is basically what we want to do. Acha, next slide. So recapping this whole thing, purpose of life is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ubudiyah, is obedience. And object of life, if we fulfill the purpose, then we get the object. What's the object? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ridha. Wa ridwanu min Allahi akbar. Okay? Second premise is hadith of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, khairun nas ma yanfa'un nas. Best of mankind are those who benefit mankind. So it doesn't say the best of mankind are those who benefit the Muslims only. Best of mankind are those who benefit mankind, all of mankind. And in this day and age, how necessary is it that this kind of world view, as they say, needs to be adopted by somebody. Yani, as you would say in your Urdu language, yani, puri insaniyat rahm kare. Everywhere it's a disaster, right? Financially, socially, politically, economically, it's a disaster everywhere we go. And so the best of mankind is those who can guide mankind out of all of these disaster zones, lead them into benefit. Okay, आगे चलें. So the concept is a bit more complex concept that we want to derive out of this text, and that is, it's a concept which basically Imam Ghazali has given in detail, and the khulasat of this and gist of it is that actually a great amount of our deen, actually our deen is of two basic parts. One part is the connection between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at-ta'alluq billah. And the second part of our deen is our ta'alluq with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's makhlooq. Okay? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala therefore has engineered our worldly existence as an existence of interdependence and interaction. Nobody can live a life on this planet by himself. You have to interact and transact with other people somewhere along the line. And actually, this is a situation which we face on a daily basis continuously. We're always interacting and transacting with others. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it like that. So we've got muamalat, and that muamalat is basically, when we talk about muamalat, we're talking about outward form. Okay? Now in the business world, in the business sense, we're talking about the outward form of transactions involving exchange of tangible goods and services. Specifically, generally, muamalat, it can be any interaction with people, whether it's tangible goods, services, meeting people, how you act, with your neighbors, everything. So the outward shakl is the interaction, the physical interaction, and the inner character, the inner aspect of transactions, we classify as akhlaq and adab. So it's not just about whether the action is Shari compliant in terms of its physical, operation, but to be ubudiyya compliant, it has to not only be Shari compliant in terms of its shakl, it has to be akhlaqi and adabi compliant. So maybe we'll coin a new terminology here, You got your Shari compliance, so what about akhlaqi compliance? Okay, you made a sale, maybe that sale it has, in terms of its revenue generation, it's, suppose 1 lakh rupees. So that 1 lakh rupees without akhlaq and then 1 lakh rupees generation with akhlaq. तो फर्क होगा, बहुत बड़ा फर्क होगा. First one may be be-barakat and the second be ba-barakat. So to be asman zameen farq. Maybe that 1 lakh rupee is going to be sufficient to carry out, your needs of, the next 5 years. And maybe that 1 lakh rupee be-barakat, that's going to go in one accident. The guy ends up in the hospital and he ends up with a 5 lakh, hospital bill. So it's not simply about numbers, it's about how we got it, whether we pleased Allah, it came with barakah. So this all comes when muamala is correct and akhlaq and adab is present. So akhlaq and adab, the inward character, morals, attitudes, general excellence and personal interaction with other human beings. And so, therefore every activity, every interaction, every transaction that we have with people, it's actually a separate amal. Just as this is a rakat of namaz, so this transaction, this act of selling, that's also an amal. Writing out your contract, act of, it's an amal. Either amal salih, ya amal talih. A good action or a bad action. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. To see who's the best. So all of these activities and transactions and activities, now particularly specifically in business, so from the time somebody comes into the office or into the factory or into his, into his place of work, so all of his activities now are interactions and transactions, and he's either going a step closer to Jannah or a step closer to Jahannam with all of these activities. So generally we're not conscious of this. We go and we say, this 8 hours on the job, that's, off the meter. Meter band ho gaya. Actually, when I go back and I go in the masjid, now my Arbudiya meter starts. It's not like that, you see. as soon as we reach bulugh, until we leave this world with, it's all on the record. It's all being recorded, Okay, next. So now application in business. Now if that's the case, okay, now how do we apply this concept in business? The implication of the hadith would be then that the best man in business, khairun nas, the best of men, are those who benefit mankind. So what about business? So the best of mankind in business would be the most beneficial to mankind in his business relationships. How he benefits mankind through his business activities, in his muamala, in his akhlaq as per Sharia and Sunnah. That's why the business objectives would not be simply, bottom line, top line, revenue generation, profit generation. Actually, your objectives would be how much khair can actually you spread throughout the ummah or throughout mankind. Okay, next please. So now our model that we're trying to develop is basically a model, a structure, which will facilitate humanity in conducting all of its business activities on the basis of ubudiyyah with Sharia and akhlaq. And as I said before, the word Sharia compliance, this is something that, alhamdulillah, there's an awareness now. 10 years ago, Sharia compliance, I don't think there was a term like that, it's kind of a merger, Sharia and then compliance. So actually this is something which, 10, 20, 15 years ago, there wasn't even awareness of that. So that, both badi baat, alhamdulillah. And there's a more badi baat, and that is that we go from Sharia compliance up to ubudiyyah excellence. Let's be not only Sharia compliant, outer shakl, let's strive towards excellence, excellence driven. Okay, next. Okay, so we actually, this model actually emerged from Al-Khair model. Actually, this was go ahead to the next slide. The next item, we shared this with you last year. Maybe this is a little refresher for those present, and an introduction to those on air. And that was that we had a small business that we had been running, and we wanted to actually make this small business a role model. And in this role model, we had this vision in mind. And that vision was that we wanted to transform the perceptions, objectives, practices of business from a material base to an ubudiyyah base. As I said before, basically this is what we consider. Now, unfortunately, since this concept, it lost its clarity somewhere along the line. Actually, our ancestors, they didn't need this whole operation. They didn't need PowerPoint presentations. This was ingrained in their system. They understood their purpose of creation, and therefore everything that they did, everything that they entered into, engaged in, it was ubudiyyah based. They understood their purpose. So whether it was business, whether it was politics, whether it was agriculture, whatever it was, so they were aligned with this. So presently, the world is aligned on a material base. And it's really a sad thing to see that a child, from the time he's able to comprehend things, he's taught material does. A good job does. A good paycheck, it does. He's not hearing from the very beginning, look, la ilaha illallah. Material is not going to do anything for you. A good job cannot do anything for you. A good degree or pedigree is not going to do for you. Actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do. These are means and ways, but actually what's happening is a programming process is taking place. So from the time the child goes into Montessori, and then he goes through Montessori to grade school, and then high school, college, university, this is what he's taught. And he's continuously taught that material does. If you have material, you're successful, And it's really a shame. Particularly we Muslims, non-Muslims, so they don't have another base actually to base on. But we have a totally different base. Unfortunately, we have not been programmed like that. So although we know that intellectually, La ilaha illallah, it's like La ilaha illallah, illa mada. Illa wa illa. There's an istithna from istithna. exception of the exception. There's no deity except Allah, but actually La ilaha illallah, the taqaza is La ilaha illallah only. There's no buts after that. Okay, how, operationally then what we engage in our occupations and professions, this is another thing. But to negate the fact that the basis and purpose of life is material, this is what we have to do first of all. Our basis of life and our basis of activities is not materials, our basis of life is ubudiyah. So first of all, what we have to do is transform the perception that business is about making money. Because every Muslim has this aqidah, amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawm al-akhir wa qadrihi khairihi wa sharrihi, right? So that being the case, I believe in this, I have iman in this. Qadr, I'm going to get what I'm going to get, and I'm not going to get more, not going to get less. So this is not the main issue at hand. The main issue at hand is acquiring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. So material base, it's not our base. Unfortunately, however, it has become our base, inadvertently. So now we have to make a conscientious effort and a conscious effort to change this base from material to ubudiyah. So we're in business. If we happen to find ourselves in the realm of business, we are in business as an ubudiyah base. We want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this business. Okay? Objectives. So therefore your objectives will change now. Objectives of material base, obviously, profit generation, profitability. Revenue generation, profitability. That's objectives. Everything in between is basically means for the main objective. That's why, if you see the model, probably one of the according to, conventional wisdom, as they say, the model of the balanced scorecard and strategy map, they have, you might have studied that. They have that also here? They study that system? Okay. So what do you end up with? You've got all these 4 perspectives and it ends up to shareholder value. The whole thing is working towards what? Shareholder value. Shareholder value meaning what? Materials. End of the day, what's the final and highest and ultimate objective? We want to ensure that we make more and more money. So this is totally and thoroughly unacceptable from our perspective. Our perspective is, look, take it easy, you're going to make what you're going to make. So that's not the issue here. The issue here is that whether our business activities are going to be considered part of our life of ubudiyya or not. Okay? So your objectives would be, top of all, that ubudiyya taqazi. Okay? Similarly, second thing is that generally objectives in material-based business would be the focus on the product. Right? Product development. And therefore you get this whole paradigm of human resource. Right? Because product focuses on product, because product is the vehicle to produce and generate revenues and ultimately profits. And that's the objective, right? So where does a human being fit into this whole scenario? Human being fits into this scenario that he's a means. Just like you have machines and you have capital and you have raw material, and you've got human beings lying around. So you use them just as you use machines and you use other things. So that is the HR paradigm. And this is basically the capitalistic paradigm and consumer-based, capitalistic-based paradigm. Man is actually, if you ask anybody, what is the product for man or man is for the product? So everybody will say, the product is for the man. But actually, operationally, it doesn't work like that. It's funny even, the kind of, it's cryingly funny. I mean, it's funny, but you would like to cry when you look at the situation. What happens is you say that, okay, we've got such and such, individuals, how do we utilize their resources, Even the language that's used when we talk about, our workforce, it's just like, it's inhuman actually, basically. It's, these are machines these are part of the gears of the machine. We'll use them, and we're done using them, and they're disposable. So the top line objectives after, pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all these, the top line objective should be the development of our people. The human beings in the organization, in our business activities, the human beings themselves, they are the focus point. They are the areas where we need to develop. And evaluating the development and the perfection of human beings in our organizations, actually that should be the miyar. And as we mentioned probably last time that we met, we talked about, not only is the product for the man, actually the task also is developed as a means of developing the man. Misal, for example, you go to a gym, right? When you go to a gym, on the gym you have a treadmill. So the treadmill, you get on the treadmill and you start running. Okay, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to develop the treadmill? Yani if I run faster, treadmill yani zyada acha hoga. Does it work like that? So treadmill is not going to, is not going to develop. I'm on the treadmill because I want to develop. So I'm using the treadmill as a means to develop myself, right? Somebody goes, and he's running around the track. So he's not doing something to help the track. Actually, he's running around the track to develop his muscles, you see. So actually, tasks in the business processes should be means of developing our people. Giving them skills and developing them that perhaps would be means of developing them in areas that are going to help them in all aspects of their lives. They become more. If you're more efficient in business, you won't be more efficient in your abudiyah, in your ibadah. If you learn to manage your time on the business, you won't manage your time better in managing your awqat of your wadaif, tilawat and zikr and awrad and nawafil. If you develop concentration and focus in business, can you not utilize that focus and concentration in your ibadat and in your mu'amalat otherwise? So the idea is that objectives now become, they're transformed. Our main objective now, as we said before, it doesn't mean that you don't earn money. Money is involved. We're talking about a business, and for these good activities to carry on, you need to generate revenue, you need to have profitability, so that you can carry on your higher objectives. So we don't say that revenue generation, profitability, efficiency, etc. are not objectives. They are objectives. But they are secondary objectives, not primary objectives. That's the difference. Okay? Obviously, practices are going to be drastically changed because our practices are, every activity we're being judged, we're being tested, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is grading us and evaluating us. Whereas in the material base, whatever practices, the ends justify the means. If you have to do this, you have to do that. If you have to lie, if you have to cheat, if you have to, pay bribes or whatever, jo kuch bhi ho, you have to actually acquire the means. So whatever means you need to get to the ends. But in our model, this is not. Islamic or Buddhist model, ends do not justify the means. And in fact, ends are not the objective. Means are the objective. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to judge us as to what we actually achieved. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to judge us as to what we did, what we undertook. And the example, the most salient example of that is Anbiya alayhimus salatu wasalam came into this world. They were given the task to invite humanity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now some of them had a very good response, some of them had a medium range response, some of them had, as it's mentioned in hadith, 1 or 2 followers. In fact, you had prophets who came into the world, they struggled the entire lifetime and they didn't get a single follower. So were they successful or unsuccessful? Definitely. So if Anbiya alayhimus salatu wasalam are not going to be judged according to the results, and this is another problem we have, material-based business, it's all result. Whether the guy, really, really struggled hard and he did the best that he could possibly do, but he didn't produce results, sales targets to ne pahunch gaya, sorry, Assalamu alaikum. you know. So yes, we do have targets and we do have, you know, objectives and financial targets and all that, but that is secondary. That is, you know, it's a support mechanism. It is not an objective. Okay. So then we need to actually transform. So you notice also we use the word transform, because actually that's what it is. You have to transform, because now we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same problem, you know, whether it's we the Muslims or anybody. Everybody's been programmed on this material base, as I mentioned from the beginning. You know, alhamdulillah, our students who came from the madaris, they have a little different background, but you know, most of us who went through the material programming from, you know, it used to be in my age, it used to be like 6, 7 years old. Now they start this programming process at 3.5 years old. You know, and it's getting even lower and lower. I think probably a day will come, they'll take the child right out of the womb of the mother and they'll put him right into the, right into the process, you know. So just to totally, you know, program this material basis. So we need to counteract that. So actually it needs to be transformed. You know, in your computer language, you need to do a complete and thorough formatting. We need to wash out that thing. And basically this is what La ilaha illallah. La ilaha nafi. Nothing is out there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. Except nafi and ithbat of Allah Jalla Jalla. So we have to take out this material base. This is actually the key to the whole process. So it's not going to happen just by a, you know, a lecture, or it's not going to happen just by some workshops. It actually requires a tremendous effort. Actually this requires a Makki effort. Therefore, you know, we have the dilemma, and everybody faces this, because anybody who's been interested in this process, they said, well, sabse badi baat ye hai ki how do we get our people onto this? Ye model bahut achhi hai, it's a very good idea and all that, but how do we get the people to comply with this? How do we get them to buy into this? How do we get them to actually... So for that, you have to, you know, we have to transform, you know, transform our inner side, you know. Just as Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says, Ala inna fil jasadi mudgha. In salahat jasad kullu. When fasadat. So, if we want this model to work, so the first and primary, you know, focus has to be on changing this heart. Dr. Asad was focusing on that as well. And it's not his theory or my theory. This is what we learn from Sirat al-Nabawi. 13 years in Makkah for this transformation. To take out this material base and put into the heart this Ubudiyya base that took 13 years at the hands of the finest teacher that has come into the existence, right? Finest students who have ever been on the face of the earth. It took them 13 years. So how long will it take us? Wallahu alam. But if we start from now, inshallah, min sara ala darb wasal. Who starts on a path, ultimately he reaches. So this is actually the key to the whole process. After that, once that base is you know, changed, then the whole process becomes easy. And if that isn't changed, then the process, it will not take place. It won't happen. This is why our initiatives for, you know, Islamic projects generally fails, because we don't focus on this first. You know, we'll establish, you know, an Islamic, you know, an Islamic system in the country. We'll establish an Islamic government in the country. The government is like the roof. It protects, right? So if you put the roof on the building before you make good solid pillars, what happens? Huh? Collapse. And when it collapses, what happens to the people underneath? So this is what's been happening, you know. So we're trying to build structures which the foundation cannot support. That's why we have to build foundation first. So these are the fundamental foundations that must be built if we want to see Shari compliance or Ubudiyya compliance in our activities in life. So that's the key to the whole process. So now, working in that direction and working on these objectives, now the mission being that we need to establish and sustain businesses on these bases, on the basis of Islamic and professional excellence. You know, We have to be able to actually give examples that it can be done, it's feasible, it's doable, and this is the example of it. Right? 10 more minutes. Okay. So, next slide. So for that, again, last year we also mentioned about this. We'll just touch it again briefly. And that is, for that you have to have culture, mahol, bi'ah. You need to develop a culture. And this is not my philosophy. This is the very operationally, this is what Nabi alayhi salam did in Medina. Working on changing the material base, the Abuya base in Makkah, when they came to Medina, what did they do? First thing they did in Medina was develop a culture. And a context for culture development. You know, everybody, and actually in corporate management principles now, they have identified that this is an extremely important aspect of success, even in material-based business. Now we already know that. That's been demonstrated and we know that. So the first thing Nabi alayhi salatu did in Medina Munawwara was what? He established a masjid. He established a markaz for developing culture. Core value. Core value what? Sifat. So when they talk about core values, we talk about sifat. Iman, yaqeen, mahabbat Allah, mahabbatul Rasul. Khawf min Allah, raja min Allah. As-sabr, al-hilm, al-ithar. Huh? So we have to develop a culture within organizations that actually promote all of this sifat building. So this is a key factor, you see. Professional excellence is actually a shakh of Islamic excellence. Kataballahu li ihsan ala kulli shay. Anything you do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do it with excellence. Therefore, your marketing should be in excellence. Your accounting should be in excellence. Your supply chain should be run with excellence. Your public relations in excellence. Everything in excellence, again, not simply to generate revenues and profitability, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants and loves excellence. Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. So we're doing something with excellence and we have that concept that Allah loves it to be done with ihsan. He loves it to be done with excellence. Jamal. Okay, so so our motivational factors are light years ahead of any other motivation. We'll give an incentive, we'll give this, we'll give them a vacation in the Bahamas. Our incentive packages that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, presented to us are light years ahead of these things. So we have to develop a culture which will actually be based and will nurture, these qualities: Islamic professional excellence, benevolence, rahmah. Next slide, please. Okay, so as our attendants here in the auditorium are well aware that last year I presented also, and I told them about that we want to develop this organization based on Islam professional excellence. Now the problem is that we really need to, in detailed fashion, define what is Islamic and professional excellence, if we really want to be, because my concept of Islamic excellence might be different than yours. So we need to come up with standards. We need to come up with criteria. We need to come up with KPIs, key performance indicators. So what happened is that we realized that this is going to require research. Next slide, please. So from this research, we came to the conclusion that what we need to do is we need to initiate an R&D project for developing this model, this business model based on Islamic and professional excellence, that we would like to see completed by March 31st, 2012, which is a month away. Make dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, helps us, to reach our target here. And what would be the expected outcome? Expected outcome is that a business model should serve, or this business model that we're developing should serve as a roadmap for Al Khair, our own company, and other businesses desirous of building their organizations on Islamic and professional excellence. As we said before, basically a roadmap and a structure that will facilitate people to run their businesses on the basis of ubudiyah. Next slide, please. And this is actually the sheet. This is actually the working that we did, the initiatives that we planned out, and the whole sort of action plan that we had for it. Go ahead. Next slide. So out of this, we came up with Jamaats. And actually, we're very interested and very anxious that we need the help of our students and faculty here in Riphah for this project. And alhamdulillah, Umair and Arshad and others, alhamdulillah, they've been very cooperative and been helping. And we need your further assistance for this. So what we came up with is that we developed 6 Jamaats in the various, business operational areas: planning, management, human development services. We call HR Human Development Services. We took out the name human resource. Human is not a resource. Human is ashraf al-makhluqat. So that department would be developing human beings into ashraf al-makhluqat, inshallah. So that department, finance, regulatory issues, that's a Jamaat, supply chain, all issues dealing with that, marketing and sales, IT as well. There's a lot of issues pertaining to IT that doesn't really, it's not apparent in the first notice, but actually there's a lot of issues in the realm of IT that need to be addressed. So we developed 6 Jamaats comprised of professionals and people in industry, 1 mufti with each, at least with each Jamaat for Shari, auditing and guidance. And we developed a Jamaat that looks over, sort of an Idari Jamaat, that looks over all these Jamaats and goes out. Now the amazing thing is that all of these Jamaats, these are all, fi sabilillah. I mean, everybody's working fi sabilillah, and there's no employment, there's no salaries involved. And mashallah, people, CEOs and MDs of companies and CPAs, and I mean very extremely busy and engaged people have sacrificed their time and their efforts, and mashallah, and they've come up with great things, and still there's a lot of work to do. So basically what all of these Jamaats are doing is listing and identifying all the activities within their business operational area. For example, take supply chain. So supply chain, that Jamaat will take all of the activities which generally take place in the supply chain, identify them, list them down, and let's scrutinize them, evaluate them. Which are those practices which are compliant? Which are those practices which are uncompliant? Audit the whole process. Which are uncompliant, and we have to, give guidelines that this is not to be done. This can be done. This needs to be modified. Here in this particular area of operations are opportunities to get more rewards, more fazilat. So each area of operations are going to work and identify what all takes place in that area of operations, list it, and give directives and guidelines how to operate in that area of operations in an Ubudiyya compliant, Shari compliant method. Okay, next slide please. So some examples of that, what we came up with, we have some do and don'ts. Make it easy for the people. Yassiru wala tuassiru. I mean, there's volumes written on most of these things, but what we want is we want a simplified walk-through type of, facilitating document that will just help people to do that. So we have, do's and don'ts. Next slide, please. We don't have time for that, but these are some do's and don'ts that may be apparent and people may not have even thought about before. But the marketing is an area that needs a lot of attention, because the marketing is an area where there's a lot of doka, there's a lot of, there's a lot of misrepresentation and a lot of un-Sharia compliance, Similarly, we have checklists. Go through your things, just your, mashallah, Professor Arshad has made a nice little pamphlet. So we wanted to expand on that idea. You have checklists and go through, make sure you're doing this. It's also got in the form of questions. Are you doing this? Is this happening? Okay. So we've got checklists as well. Okay, Agi. And for that, actually, we conducted a number of gatherings, ijtima'at, so that we could actually, gather together. Jamaats were formed and they worked. Go ahead, next. And what they did was, The first day, each Jamaat did a presentation of what type of work they have actually done. Because what we found is that, for example, here in Riphah, you've been doing a lot of work. We found in Lahore, we have organizations that have been doing work on these lines. We found other people in Karachi. So we gathered them all together. Who has done what? Let's see what people have already done up to now. What more needs to be done? What more needs to be refined? So the first day were presentations on what people have done up to now. Second day was, okay, what more needs to be done? The Jamaat sat together and saw what more work actually needs to be done. And then the third day, presentations were given that this is the work that we would like to undertake until the next Ijtima that was 3 months down the road. Aage chale. Okay, so up to now what has happened is that, as I said, the Jamaats have been formed, work is going on, research is going on, and now pilot projects are now about to be started. From beginning of March, we're going to start pilot projects and implementing, these structures, these documents in various organizations in Karachi. And by May, the next Ijtima that we're going to be having is in May, and we'll review now what progress we've had with these pilot projects. What are the problems? What are the challenges? Wagaira. Aage. Okay. Acha, let's go to the next slide. Actually, Akhir Da'wan is not yet. Go ahead. So actually what came out of this whole thing was actually a waqf was developed. And rather than going and having in our waqf, we were discussing vision, mission and all that. So we decided vision, mission is very confusing. Mission kya hai, mission, vision kya hai, is mission, vision, vision, mission, and it gets confusing. Lekin maqasid yani bilkul wadih, right? So we decided to use this terminology, which is Islamic terminology. We'll use maqasid. Maqasid we would translate as objectives. So highest level objective, please Allah. Second level objective, that we want to see Muslims as the embodiment of ubudiyyah in all aspects of life. Okay. Second level of objective, so to revive the letter and spirit of ubudiyyah in muamalat. And then third is to undertake fikr and amal to transform business activities from material base to a ubudiyyah base. So that's where we get the UBM. The UBM starts from here. Aage, that's going to be an onward process. Next slide. So for that you need tahqiq, research. That research is ongoing. Next slide. Obviously we need ta'aleem and tarbiyah, starting from training, starting from perhaps internships, and it would go right up to course structure and ultimately auditing and ultimately accreditation. So you would have a whole system. So rather than having an ISO 9000, 14000, you'll have a UBM accreditation and certification. So for that there's a lot of work and there's a lot to do last. And then obviously you would, next slide please. Tanfeed, muraqaba, muhasaba. So for that actually we're talking about, implementation, auditing, evaluation, and then ultimately accreditation to ensure that the system is in place and working and producing results. Huh? Okay. Then Akhir Da'wana and Alhamdulillah. Huh? Conclude 1 minute. So basically this is the project, and it's not my project, it's the project of the Ummah. هذه بضاعتكم ردت إليكم. Particularly our ulama, hazarats, mashallah, this is, they have the ultimate and supreme responsibility in this, because guidance actually is going to be from ulama hazarats. So we want Riphah University to play, in America they say the lion's share, I don't know if it's a suitable phrase over here, but we want a huge share of this to be in Riphah's, what we say, khifat al-hasanat, okay? So are you prepared for that? Inshallah. So we hope for a good interaction with our Riphah people, and students and faculty, and perhaps projects will be, inshallah, initiated that will help, in these stages of development and implementation and evaluation. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the tawfiq to make us among those يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. وصلی اللہ تعالی علی خیر خلقہ سیدنا محمد وعلی آلہ وصحبہ وسلم. والسلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ.
ویلکم بیک لسنرز. آپ سن رہے تھے جناب شیخ ہاشم احمد صاحب کا خطاب براہ راست راضی حال رفاح انٹرنیشنل یونیورسٹی سے، اور یہ ہماری آج کی خصوصی ٹرانسمیشن یہاں پہ اختتام پذیر ہوتی ہیں. اور ابھی آپ کے لیے ہم اپنی روٹین کی جو ابھی ریپیٹ براڈ کاسٹ جو ہے وہ آپ کے لیے پیش کرنے لگے ہیں. عرفان بھٹی کو اجازت دیجیے، پھر کسی نشریات میں آپ سے ملاقات ہوگی. اللہ حافظ.